In the 1990s, McDonald's wasn't just a fast food chain. It became something bigger. It became a playground for dreams. One marketing campaign was enough to change the behavior of millions. A campaign everyone recognized instantly: Monopoly. The rules were simple. Order your meal, get a game piece, and that little sticker, it could change your entire life. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, electronics, cars, boats, cash prizes starting at $1,000 and going all the way up to $1 million. There was only $1 million prize each time. But that was all it took. People became obsessed. They lined up in the streets. They came back again and again. Families collected game pieces at the dinner table. Sales exploded. In fact, they skyrocketed so dramatically that McDonald's decided to run the promotion more than once a year. But behind all the excitement, behind the flashing ads and smiling winners, there was a secret. From 1989 to 2001, for 12 straight years, not a single person won the $1 million prize legitimately. Yes, there were winners. There were photos. There were celebrations. But the truth? Every single one of them was part of one of the smartest and most dangerous fraud schemes in American marketing history. And behind it all stood one man. A man known by a nickname that sounded almost friendly: Uncle Jerry. In just a few years, he managed to steal more than $25 million in prize money, without raising serious suspicion. He wasn't a loud criminal. He wasn't reckless. He was calm, methodical, strategic, and he had connections to something far more dangerous than anyone expected: the mafia. So how did he pull it off? How did the scheme work from the inside? How did McDonald's, a global corporation with massive power and resources, fail to realize the game was rigged? This isn't just a fraud story. It's a story about blind trust, about greed, about deception that lasted more than a decade. And now, let's dive into the details. The story doesn't begin where anyone expected. It begins inside the offices of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, more specifically, at the Jacksonville, Florida field office. This wasn't just any office. This branch handled major corruption cases, complex fraud schemes, and investigations involving massive corporations. And in 2001, a mysterious phone call came in, a call that changed everything. The caller never revealed his identity. His name was never made public. For the sake of this story, we'll call him the informant. He said one sentence, just one, and it was enough to open the door to one of the most dangerous marketing scandals in American history. McDonald's monopoly was rigged. But he didn't stop there. He gave investigators the names of 3 people who had won the $1 million prize over the years. On the surface, there was nothing connecting them. Different names, different last names, different backgrounds, nothing suspicious. But when FBI agents started digging deeper, they were stunned. It turned out these winners were actually related. Maybe not closely, maybe distant cousins, maybe connected through marriage, maybe third-degree relatives, but related. And what are the odds that more than one person from the same extended family would win the rarest, hardest prize in the entire game? Almost impossible. The informant added something even more explosive. He told them one man was behind all of it. One man. A man known by a nickname that sounded almost harmless: Uncle Jerry. According to the informant, Uncle Jerry was the mastermind. At that moment, investigators started asking the most dangerous question of all. Is it possible that a promotional game run by a corporation as powerful as McDonald's had been infiltrated? Because the Monopoly promotion wasn't new. McDonald's first launched it in 1987, and they ran it 2, sometimes 3 times a year. By the time that call came in, the game had been around for over 14 years. So the question became, how long had this been happening? The FBI's first move was simple. They reviewed the list of every single grand prize winner, every $1 million winner, from the beginning of the promotion through 2001. And that's when the real shock hit. A significant number of winners, once investigators examined their backgrounds, were connected by family ties, sometimes close relatives, sometimes extremely distant, but connected. The odds of that happening randomly? It would be like getting struck by lightning 10 times in a row. At that point, there was no more doubt. This wasn't coincidence. This was organized fraud. Someone, somehow, had managed to get their hands on the winning pieces, the rare, high-value game pieces, before they ever reached the public. And to understand the scale of the crime, you have to understand the prizes. Not every Monopoly piece was huge. Most were losers. Some offered a free meal, others offered small electronics, then bigger prizes, TVs, appliances, refrigerators, then vacations, cars, boats. Cash prizes started at $1,000, then $10,000, $25,000, $100,000. But above all of that, there was one prize. The dream. The legend. The prize McDonald's built its entire advertising campaign around. $1 million. And after digging through years of records, the FBI uncovered a devastating truth. From 1989 to 2001, there was not a single legitimate million-dollar winner. 12 straight years. The fraud had been running the entire time. And yet, no one noticed. But there was one problem. At this point, investigators only had one real lead. Just one name. The mysterious man behind it all. Uncle Jerry. The FBI agents were genuinely confused. The picture in front of them was incomplete. There were dangerous gaps in the information. If they were going to understand how this fraud worked, they had to find the exact weak point. The vulnerability. The crack in the system that allowed someone to access the winning pieces, and only the winning pieces. They needed answers to some very sensitive questions. Where were the Monopoly game pieces printed? Where were the cups and packaging produced? How were they distributed to thousands of locations? And most importantly, how did McDonald's guarantee the process was truly random and impossible to manipulate? But there was a bigger problem. The FBI was extremely hesitant to bring McDonald's management into the investigation. There was a very real fear that someone inside the company might be involved, or at the very least, aware of what was happening. Still, they had no choice. They had no solid lead, no new names, no starting point. And eventually, they made the hardest decision. They had to contact McDonald's. The FBI reached out to a senior executive, the company's head of security, one of the highest-ranking officials inside McDonald's. They didn't explain the case. They simply said, "We need you to come to our office immediately. There's a matter of extreme importance we need to discuss." They told him to bring only 2 or 3 trusted people, and most importantly, not to tell anyone he was meeting with the FBI. Soon after, 3 top McDonald's executives boarded a plane to Jacksonville, Florida, home of the FBI field office. They were picked up directly from the airport. No stops, no detours, straight to the bureau. Inside the conference room, investigators laid everything out. The Monopoly game had been compromised. The major prize winners over the years, fraudulent, and the most shocking detail of all. Many of those winners were related, even if their last names were different. The executives were stunned. Their first reaction was immediate and obvious. We need to shut the game down. Now. Especially since a new promotional run was about to launch soon. But the FBI stopped them. They told them that would be the worst possible move. If the promotion suddenly stopped, the fraudsters would know they'd been discovered. They would disappear. Instead, the FBI made a bold request. Launch the promotion as planned. Let it run, and allow the Bureau to monitor everything from the inside, hoping it would reveal exactly how the manipulation was happening. The executives were deeply uncomfortable. The discussion inside that FBI office went on for a long time. Finally, the three executives said something very clear. This decision is bigger than us. It has to go to the full board. So some FBI agents traveled with them to McDonald's headquarters. There, behind closed doors, a private meeting was held with the company's top leadership. After a long and tense discussion, the board agreed. The new Monopoly campaign would launch, and the FBI would quietly investigate while it was running. But that wasn't the only crucial question raised in that meeting. There was another one, a central one. Who was actually responsible for printing and distributing the game pieces? And that's when the answer changed everything. McDonald's explained that the Monopoly promotion was not run directly by the company itself. It was handled by an outside marketing firm under contract. The name of that firm was Simon Marketing. Simon Marketing handled everything, printing the game pieces, distributing them, ensuring the process was secure and random. And in that moment, the FBI realized something critical. If there was a breach, it wasn't inside the McDonald's restaurants. It wasn't even inside McDonald's corporate headquarters. It was inside the marketing company itself, Simon Marketing. And that's when the threads truly began to connect, and the investigation entered its most dangerous phase. Simon Marketing was considered one of McDonald's most important strategic partners. The campaigns they ran were powerful, highly successful. But the strongest one, by far, was the Monopoly promotion. One campaign, total prizes worth up to $50 million. And at the very top, the prize that captured everyone's imagination, $1 million. On the surface, the game looked simple. Customers received Monopoly game pieces when they bought meals, attached to cups, boxes, wrappers, or through partnered magazines that included special game inserts. If someone found a winning piece, they would contact McDonald's directly. And McDonald's had extremely strict verification systems, especially for the major prizes, to confirm the piece was authentic and not counterfeit. We'll get into those systems later. What matters now is this. The promotion was wildly successful. Every time the Monopoly game launched, McDonald's sales increased, sometimes by as much as 40%. Everyone knew the odds were tiny. But the dream of $1 million? That was enough to make millions of people play. But imagine this. What if customers had known that the real chance of winning wasn't just small, it was zero? Because one man was intercepting the high-value winning pieces before they ever reached the cups and boxes. As agreed between the FBI and McDonald's, and with cooperation from Simon Marketing, a new Monopoly campaign was launched. No changes, no warnings. Everything appeared normal. It didn't take long. McDonald's received another call. Someone claimed they had found the $1 million game piece. The piece was collected, carefully examined. It was completely authentic. A new winner was announced. His name was Michael Hoover. He worked as a manager at a casino. The news immediately reached the FBI, and without hesitation, they began investigating Michael. Step 1. Monitor his phone calls. Of course, the FBI couldn't just tap his line. They needed a federal judge's approval, which required presenting strong suspicion and justification. Once they secured the warrant, the wiretaps began. Days passed. Every call sounded normal. Nothing suspicious. No confessions. No hints. Until one investigator had a completely different idea. Every Monopoly winner signed a contract with McDonald's. One clause allowed the company to use the winner's name and image for advertising and promotional purposes. That's when the investigator said, "Why don't we use that clause? Why not arrange a fake interview with Michael Hoover? Make it look like it's coming from McDonald's marketing department." Simple questions. How did you feel when you won? How did you get the game piece? What are you planning to do with the $1 million? It would feel natural, harmless, nothing suspicious. They contacted McDonald's head of marketing and requested official approval from senior leadership. During the meeting, the FBI revealed the full truth to her. The Monopoly game had been compromised. Every major winner in previous years had been a fraud. She was stunned. But once she processed it, she agreed to cooperate immediately. She contacted Michael Hoover and told him that McDonald's marketing team would love to interview him. A small crew would come film his story as part of a promotional campaign. Michael didn't hesitate. He agreed right away. A date was set. Cameras would roll. And in that moment, the FBI had set their first real trap. On the day of the scheduled shoot, the film crew headed to Michael Hoover's house. But this wasn't a normal production team. Every single person in that crew was an FBI agent, all except one. The head of marketing from McDonald's, who was there to make everything look real, to add credibility, to make the setup believable. Outside the house, another FBI team was stationed nearby. Their job? Wiretapping, recording every single word spoken inside. The crew walked in carrying a giant check, printed across it in bold letters, $1 million. The goal was simple: film promotional footage, capture the winner celebrating, create a feel-good marketing moment. They sat down with Michael. The usual questions started. How did you feel when you found out? What was your first reaction? Then came the most important question. Tell us, how did you get the $1 million game piece? And that's when Michael Hoover began telling a story straight out of his imagination. He said he had been lying on the beach one day. He fell asleep for a while. When he woke up, he was covered in sand. He gathered his belongings and walked toward the ocean to rinse off. While he was in the water, some of his things fell in, including a magazine. A magazine that happened to contain Monopoly game pieces. According to him, he went home. On the way, he passed by a nearby supermarket. He saw the same magazine he had lost, so he decided to buy another copy. When he opened it at home, there it was, the $1 million piece. It was the perfect story. Clean, simple, hard to question. To make it even more convincing, the FBI agents took the next step. They filmed him holding the giant check in front of his house. Then they asked him to take them to the beach where he supposedly lost the first magazine. They filmed him there too, smiling, holding the check, standing on the sand. After that, they went with him to the supermarket where he claimed he had bought the replacement copy. More photos, more footage. Everything looked like a complete marketing campaign. An unbelievable stroke of luck. A man who found $1 million in a magazine. When it was over, they thanked Michael for his time and left quietly. On the surface, the investigators hadn't gotten a direct confession. No smoking gun. But they were confident. Something would move. And it did. Less than 30 minutes after the FBI team left Michael Hoover's house, the wiretap picked up a new call. Michael dialed someone. "Hey, AJ." The man on the other end was named AJ. Michael spoke with relief in his voice. They bought everything. The beach story, the magazine, the supermarket. They didn't suspect a thing. Just asked a few normal questions. AJ replied, Good, my friend." It was a short call, but it was enough. At that exact moment, Michael and AJ believed they had fooled everyone. What they didn't know was that the FBI had heard every single word, recorded it, time-stamped it. That call was the first undeniable confirmation. This wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was organized fraud. And more importantly, a new name had just entered the investigation. A name that would bring them one step closer to the mysterious man who had been pulling the strings all along. The first real lead the FBI decided to chase was the second voice on that phone call with Michael Hoover. The man named AJ. After digging deeper, they discovered his full name was AJ Glom. They pulled everything they could on him: his criminal record, his movements, his connections, his entire past. And very quickly, one thing became clear. AJ was not some random guy. He was a drug dealer, not a kingpin, but not small time either. He had a record, and he had already served 12 years in prison. The FBI immediately started wiretapping his calls, and that's when everything blew wide open. AJ Glom wasn't dealing with just one winner. He wasn't connected to just one prize. From the calls, it became obvious he was distributing winning game pieces to multiple people. Not just the $1 million piece. He was talking about $10,000 prizes, $25,000, $100,000, cars, other high-value rewards. He was speaking to different people, coordinating, giving instructions, managing timing, like a middleman, a bridge between two sides. But as the days passed, another truth became clear. AJ wasn't the mastermind. In almost every call, one name kept coming up, one name that never disappeared. "Uncle Jerry's got the piece. I'm meeting Uncle Jerry on Thursday. Don't make Uncle Jerry mad." Again, and again, and again. The repetition was impossible to ignore. That's when investigators realized AJ wasn't the real target. The real target was the man behind him. But something else stood out. AJ wasn't calling Uncle Jerry directly, at least not from one consistent number. Whoever Uncle Jerry was, he was careful. Very careful. So the FBI went deeper. They pulled phone records for all previous major prize winners, especially the $1 million winners. This was 2001. There were no advanced digital databases. Everything was paper, stacks and stacks and stacks of call logs. The work was exhausting, slow, painful, but after days of combing through thousands of pages, they saw it. A number. Actually, several numbers. All registered to the same person. Those numbers appeared in the phone records of different winners, before they claimed their prizes, and immediately after. Then suddenly, the calls would stop. The name tied to those numbers was Jerome Jacobson. But that wasn't the name people knew. He was known as Jerry Jacobson, or to those close to him, Uncle Jerry. And then came the bombshell. Jerome Jacobson held one of the most sensitive positions possible. He was director of security at Simon Marketing, the very company contracted by McDonald's to run the Monopoly game. At that moment, investigators looked at each other and thought, "We've got the head of the snake." Immediately, they began wiretapping Uncle Jerry. At the same time, they dug into his background. They discovered he had once been a police officer. He left the force due to illness. That law enforcement background made him the perfect candidate to become director of security at Simon. He knew procedures. He knew protocols. He knew how investigations worked. But the FBI couldn't just storm in and arrest him. Not yet. They needed something more important. They needed the full story. They had to understand. How were the game pieces stolen? How were the prizes removed from the system? Where exactly was the vulnerability? So they turned to McDonald's for help. And here's the ironic part. Even McDonald's executives didn't fully understand the detailed mechanics of how the game operated. Everything had been outsourced to Simon Marketing. One senior McDonald's executive arranged a formal meeting with Simon under the pretense of reviewing procedures. The goal? Get every detail and pass it to the FBI. Simon's leadership walked them through the entire system. On paper, it was airtight. The game pieces were printed at a high-security external facility called Dittler Brothers Printing. The building had 24-hour security. No one entered without authorization. Every person signed in, time out. To access the actual printing area, there was a second secured gate. Cameras everywhere, alarms, constant monitoring. And when it came to printing the high-value winning pieces, security tightened even more. A vault-like door with 2 locks, 2 separate access codes, 2 employees required to open it together. Representatives from Simon Marketing were present the entire time to supervise the printing, including Uncle Jerry himself. Once printed, the high-value pieces were placed inside a special briefcase, a briefcase that Jerry physically handcuffed to his own wrist. But even then, he didn't have total control. The briefcase required 2 codes to open. Half the code was with Jerry. The other half was held by an independent auditor who accompanied him at all times. As for the regular game pieces, they were sealed in locked trucks with tamper-proof security seals and shipped to various factories across the United States, where they were attached to cups and food packaging. On the surface, the system looked flawless, perfect, impenetrable. So now there was only one question left. If all of this was so tightly secured, how was Uncle Jerry stealing the winning pieces without anyone seeing a thing? When it came to the high-value game pieces, the security was even tighter. Simon Marketing employees, along with supervisors from Dittler Brothers Printing, personally oversaw the distribution of those pieces onto the packaging. Uncle Jerry would arrive with the briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. In front of everyone, he would enter his half of the access code. Then the independent auditor would enter the other half. Click. The case would open. Inside, a single envelope. On that envelope was written the exact number of winning pieces inside. It was sealed with a special security sticker, a tamper-evident seal. If anyone tried to peel it back, even slightly, it would be obvious immediately. Uncle Jerry himself would open the envelope. He would remove the winning pieces, and everyone in the room would watch closely. Those pieces were then randomly attached to packaging on the production line. In theory, no one could possibly know where each piece ended up. After that, the products were shipped to restaurants. Customers bought their meals, and luck decided the rest. But how did McDonald's verify that a high-value winning piece was real? Those pieces had special security features. For example, a specific letter, like the letter K, was cut in a precise, unique way along one edge. But more importantly, each major prize piece had a hidden code, printed in invisible ink. It could only be seen under ultraviolet light. In other words, forging one of these pieces was nearly impossible. The system looked complex, tight, monitored from every angle. And even though Uncle Jerry was at the center of it all, the FBI still couldn't understand one thing. How was he stealing the pieces in the middle of all this security, without anyone noticing? They kept listening. To Michael Hoover, to A.J. Glom, to Uncle Jerry, to several previous winners, but nothing new. No suspicious calls, no confessions, no slip-ups. That's when investigators realized they needed a completely different strategy. So they came up with something smart. They decided to lure in all the previous million-dollar winners, but this time in a way that wouldn't raise suspicion. Through McDonald's, they contacted the winners and told them, "We're planning a major celebration, a reunion event for all the past grand prize winners." And where would this celebration be held? Las Vegas, the city of excitement, first-class flights, luxury hotels, fine dining, entertainment, everything paid for by McDonald's, framed as part of a massive marketing campaign. Naturally, most of the winners agreed immediately. Then came one small condition. Before the event, we'd like to film a short interview with you, just talking about how you felt and how you won. Light questions, friendly tone, nothing threatening. One of those winners was a man named Buddy Fisher, and from the moment the interview began, something felt off. Buddy was extremely nervous, overly nervous. He stumbled over his words, mixed up details. Sweat poured down his face. He tried to build a story, but the words wouldn't come. He kept apologizing. "Sorry, I'm just not used to cameras." But the truth was simpler than that. He was lying, trying to invent a story, just like Michael Hoover had done before him, but without the same confidence. And even though Buddy Fisher didn't give investigators a direct confession, he led them to a critical new thread. Buddy Fisher was the father of a woman named Robin Colombo, and Robin was married to a man named Jerry Colombo. Yes, another Jerry. But this time, his role in the story would turn out to be far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Jerry Colombo wasn't just another lucky winner in the McDonald's Monopoly game. Yeah, he won one of the big prizes, a car, not the $1 million ticket. And he even showed up in a real McDonald's commercial, smiling for the cameras like the perfect all-American winner. But behind those cameras, there was a much darker truth. Jerry Colombo wasn't just a winner. He was a key player inside the fraud itself. He was the first and biggest middleman working directly with the mastermind, Uncle Jerry. At the beginning, Uncle Jerry didn't have some massive criminal network. He relied on people he knew, friends, acquaintances, friends of friends. But that circle was small and dangerous. Too many familiar names, too many family connections, and the whole thing could collapse. So the real problem became clear. How do you distribute $1 million winning tickets without anyone noticing that the winners are connected? The answer came by accident. At an airport. That's where Uncle Jerry met Jerry Colombo. And that name? It wasn't random. The Colombo family was one of the most powerful and infamous Italian mafia families in the United States, one of the legendary 5 families in organized crime history. And Jerry Colombo had connections, real ones, across states, across cities, across networks of people who didn't appear linked on paper. He was perfect. The deal between Uncle Jerry and Jerry Colombo was simple, brutally simple. $1 million ticket, sold for just $50,000. Sounds insane, right? Why would anyone sell $1 million prize for 50 grand? But in criminal logic, it made sense. First, Uncle Jerry didn't want the headache. No chasing people, no direct contact, no exposure. Second, the $1 million prize wasn't paid up front. It was paid over 20 years, $50,000 a year. After taxes, closer to $35,000 annually. That's not instant wealth. That's a long-term payout. So from Uncle Jerry's perspective, quick, clean cash, and no strings. Other high-value tickets, cars, boats, large cash prizes, were sold at different rates, depending on how fast the winner could collect. Car tickets, for example, were more expensive, because the prize was immediate. Then came Jerry Colombo's real role. He didn't just pass tickets along, he selected the winners carefully, usually people connected to him, or connected to someone who trusted him. The agreement? Typically 50% of the winnings for a set period. In the case of the $1 million prize, 50% for 5 years. That meant $25,000 a year from every payout. Sometimes the percentage shifted depending on the relationship. But Colombo always got his cut. At first, the winners looked similar. Mostly white men, same regions, same social circles, and that's when his wife, Robin Colombo, noticed something dangerous. "This pattern is risky," she told him. "It could raise questions." She was right. So she suggested someone completely different. Gloria Brown, a black single mother living in Florida, struggling financially, no obvious connection to anyone in the network. On paper, she was perfect means of diversifying the winners. For Gloria, the offer felt unreal. $1 million, a chance to change everything. But when Jerry Colombo sat down with her, he didn't sugarcoat anything. "You'll give me 50% of the winnings for 5 years," he told her. That meant $25,000 a year. Gloria agreed, but then came the real shock. "Before you get the ticket," he said, "you have to pay $50,000 up front." That $50,000 wasn't even for him. It was the money he owed Uncle Jerry for the ticket. Gloria didn't have that kind of cash, not even close. Her only option? A loan, and putting her house up as collateral. Think about that for a second. She was about to risk her home for a promise. No ticket in hand, no contract, no guarantee, just trust and fear. Fear of missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime. In the end, that fear won. She took the loan, she mortgaged her house, and she handed over $50,000 in cash on the street. Like a scene straight out of a crime movie. Gloria later said it was one of the most terrifying moments of her life. $50,000 in her hands, and then gone. And the worst part? Jerry Colombo didn't even give her the ticket right then. He told her he had to go buy it from Uncle Jerry first. She walked away, not knowing if she'd ever see him again, or if she had just lost her home and her future in a single decision. But this wasn't a small-time scam. Jerry Colombo wasn't a random con artist. He was part of something much bigger, and it was in his interest to come back with the $1 million ticket. What Gloria didn't know was that while she was stepping into the most dangerous deal of her life, the FBI was getting closer. Closer to Colombo, closer to Uncle Jerry, and closer to blowing the entire operation wide open. A few days later, Jerry Colombo came back, just like he promised, and in his hand, the $1 million ticket. He personally drove Gloria Brown to a McDonald's location and told her exactly what to do. Act natural, like you just found it. She walked in, turned in the ticket, smiled for the cameras. Everything moved with terrifying smoothness. The ticket was examined, verified, and then it was official. Gloria Brown was the newest million-dollar winner. But the celebration? It lasted minutes. Because when the first annual payment came in, $50,000, Jerry showed up immediately. No hesitation, no discussion. He held out his hand. He took his half, $25,000. And then came the real disaster. Taxes, all of them, were Gloria's responsibility. Out of the $50,000 annual payment, she owed roughly $15,000 in taxes. That left her with $10,000. On paper, that might not sound terrible, but reality was brutal. She had taken out a loan, she had mortgaged her house. That $10,000 barely covered her loan payments. Some years, it didn't even cover that. In the first few years, Gloria wasn't winning. She was drowning, fighting just to survive, for herself and her son. Meanwhile, Jerry Colombo, he showed no mercy. He was firm, cold, direct. If she ever delayed his payment, he would hint and sometimes openly threaten consequences. After all, he came from the mafia world. And in that world, money isn't a favor. It's owed. The cruel irony? Gloria had no idea this suffering would eventually be for nothing. Because when the case finally exploded, she would be required to return every dollar she received from McDonald's, even the money Jerry had taken. In the end, she wouldn't walk away at zero. She would walk away deeply in the negative. But Jerry Colombo's story? Very different. His shares from multiple winners piled up. Money flowed fast. He became wealthy almost overnight. And he started living like it. Lavish spending, spoiling his family, giving in to every desire. And then one day, at an airport, he walked up to a ticket counter. And that's where he met her, Lee Cassano, an airline employee, Italian like him. A small conversation, a compliment, another smile. And soon, it became an affair. He cheated on his wife without hesitation. He traveled with Lee, bought her expensive gifts, spent freely, all funded by money that was never truly his. Then, after a few months, he offered her something unbelievable. A gift of a lifetime. A $100,000 winning ticket. This prize was different. It was paid almost entirely up front. Lee turned in the ticket. It was approved. A check was issued. $100,000. But when she went to the bank to cash it, Jerry was standing right there. The moment the money was in her hands, he took it. Calmly. "Don't worry," he told her. "I need to pay some people their share. I'll give you the rest later." But Lee understood something he pretended not to mention. That $100,000 came with about $30,000 in taxes. And legally, she was responsible. As days passed, her anxiety turned into fear. Every time she asked about the money, he said the same thing. Later. Soon. Relax. Then his tone changed. He became irritable, explosive. Even mentioning the money would set him off. And that's when Jerry Colombo's life began to spiral. One day, he was on the phone with Lee, but his wife, Robin, overheard. She stormed in, snatched the phone from his hand, screamed at Lee, then at him. A full-blown explosion inside their home. And in the middle of that chaos, the most dangerous threat was spoken. "I'll go to the FBI. I'll tell them everything." From that moment on, nothing was the same. Their marriage entered a cycle of suspicion anger, and threats. They had a child together. And maybe that child was the only reason Robin didn't immediately act on her threat. But the crack had formed, and the network that had been built on greed and deception was beginning to fracture from the inside, step by step. Not long after that, Jerry Colombo wasn't satisfied. The McDonald's money was flowing in, but it wasn't enough. He wanted more noise, more attention, more chaos. So he decided to open a nightclub. Loud music, dancers, late nights, the kind of place that attracts trouble, like a magnet. The problem? The government wasn't blind. The club was shut down more than once for violations, and every single time, Jerry found a way to reopen it. Different name, different paperwork, different trick. But then, he crossed into the absurd. In one of the strangest attempts to dodge the law, he officially registered the nightclub as a church. Yes, a church, a full-blown nightclub, legally filed as a religious institution. The story exploded publicly. Jerry Colombo appeared on television more than once, complaining about government persecution. Meanwhile, callers phoned in live, accusing him of turning a church into a strip club. It became a public spectacle, and that media exposure, it wasn't just stupid, it was dangerous. Even Uncle Jerry, the real mastermind, wasn't happy. Because shining a spotlight on Jerry Colombo, even for something unrelated, could bring unwanted attention to the entire fraud network. And at home, things were even worse. The fights between Jerry and Robin escalated violently. She openly accused him of hiring dancers, of cheating, of humiliating her. She knew exactly what was happening behind her back. Then one day, while they were driving, their young son sitting in the back seat, another argument exploded. The child woke up crying. The tension spiked. Voices rose. No one was focused on the road. In a moment of chaos, the car slammed into a truck. Sirens, paramedics, police. Robin and the child survived with relatively minor injuries, but Jerry Colombo, because of his large build, suffered severe internal injuries. He was rushed to intensive care. He survived only a few days, and then he died. It was 1998, 3 years before the FBI would officially begin investigating the case. For some people, his death was a relief. Winners like Gloria Brown no longer had to hand over their annual payments. The financial bleeding stopped. But for others, it was a disaster. The biggest victim was his secret lover, the airline employee, the woman he never repaid. She was left alone, facing nearly $30,000 in taxes on money she no longer had. After Jerry's death, the family war began. His brother, Frank Colombo, his mother, Ma Colombo, other relatives. They pointed fingers directly at Robin. Some even accused her outright of causing the crash intentionally. Robin denied everything, cut ties with the family, took her son and disappeared from them. But Ma Colombo wasn't done. She wanted her grandson, at any cost. And then, the irony. Robin herself began to fall apart. She refused to give up the luxury lifestyle she had grown used to, so she turned to fraud, writing bad checks, getting involved in drug-related charges, and eventually, she was arrested and sent to prison. After she went to jail, her home was completely looted. Furniture, jewelry, everything, gone. No one ever officially proved who did it, but Jerry Colombo had lived in the mafia world, and men like that rarely leave behind a short list of enemies. With Robin gone, custody of the child went to Ma Colombo, Exactly what she had wanted all along. Now you might be asking, what does all of this have to do with the bigger case? Why so many tangled threads? Trust me, every single strand in this story, no matter how small it seems, is moving toward the same point. And we're not there yet. Now, we go back to Uncle Jerry, the man who stayed in the shadows, quiet, careful, never loud, never careless. When Jerry Colombo died in 1998, Uncle Jerry lost his most important middleman. Almost 8 years of cooperation, gone overnight. The distribution network he had relied on for years collapsed in a single moment. But Uncle Jerry didn't panic. He didn't stop. He understood one simple rule. If the game is going to continue, you just need new middlemen. The first replacement? E.J. Glom. E.J. wasn't some random guy. He had a criminal record, a former inmate, 12 years in prison for drug trafficking. He wasn't a kingpin, just a small-time dealer. But prison does something to a person. It hardens you, sharpens you, teaches you how to move in dirty deals without flinching. After his release, one of Uncle Jerry's contacts approached him. The pitch was simple. Winning game pieces, huge money, risky, yes. But the payoff? Massive. E.J. didn't hesitate. Fresh out of prison, and within a short time, he became one of Uncle Jerry's most trusted distributors. He was the one who handed the $1 million piece to Michael Hoover, the very first winner who caught the FBI's attention in this entire story. But E.J. wasn't alone. Through wiretaps, the FBI uncovered another name, Dwight Baker. And Dwight's story? Very different. Dwight was a contractor. He met Uncle Jerry through work, possibly building him a house or working on his property. Over time, business turned into friendship. Then one day, Uncle Jerry made him an offer, a $1 million game piece, in exchange for $100,000 cash, up front. Dwight wanted it, badly, but he simply didn't have the money. That's when he had an idea. He told Uncle Jerry, "I don't have $100,000, but I know someone who might." Uncle Jerry, as always, was cautious. He responded with one sentence. He better be trustworthy. Dwight assured him he was. The person he had in mind wasn't a stranger. It was his adopted son, not biological, but raised from childhood. Their bond was real. His name was George Chandler. George was a businessman, an investor, liquid. He had cash. Dwight went to him, but he didn't tell him the full truth. He didn't mention a fraud network. He didn't mention stolen game pieces. Instead, he crafted a cleaner story. "There's a guy I know," he said. "He's going through a divorce. He won the McDonald's $1 million prize, but he doesn't want to claim it yet, because his wife would take half. So he wants to sell it for $100,000 cash." It sounded twisted, but believable. George did the math. Yes, the prize pays out over 20 years. Yes, taxes are heavy. But after 3 or 4 years, he'd recover his investment. After that, pure profit. Long-term investment, high risk, high reward. He agreed. The deal was made. The $100,000 was paid, and George Chandler received the piece. Soon after, a new $1 million winner was officially announced. George Chandler. Dwight Baker didn't take a cut. No commission, no percentage. He wasn't trying to exploit his son. But what he saw next changed him. He saw the money flow. He saw how easy it was to move a game piece for tens of thousands of dollars. And that's when Dwight stepped in. He became another distributor for Uncle Jerry. He began searching for wealthy individuals, people with cash on hand and appetite for risk. As a contractor, Dwight had connections. Business owners, investors, people with money and greed, and so. While the FBI watched from a distance, Uncle Jerry's network quietly rebuilt itself. Different faces, same system, same corruption. And the clock? It was still ticking. The FBI were not working in the dark. Through the wiretaps on Uncle Jerry, they reached the name Dwight Baker, and the moment his name surfaced, they moved to the next phase. They started wiretapping him too. Little by little, the picture began coming together. From the calls, agents learned that a meeting was coming up, a face-to-face between Dwight Baker and Uncle Jerry. Money in exchange for game pieces. That was the moment. The FBI decided to move. They set up a tight surveillance operation. They monitored the location. They installed cameras. They waited. And then, it happened. The meeting took place in a public parking lot. Clear footage, clear visuals, money changing hands, game pieces being exchanged. For the investigators, this was it. The turning point. The evidence was strong. The names were clear. The network was almost fully exposed. Only one mystery remained. How was Uncle Jerry actually stealing the pieces in the first place, with all that security around him? But at this stage, that question was no longer a deal-breaker. The case, as it stood, was powerful enough to take everyone down, and investigators were confident that once arrests were made, the confessions would fill in the blanks. Then came August 21st, 2001. The big strike. At the exact same moment, in a coordinated effort across multiple states, FBI offices moved in. Arrests began. Nearly 8 people were taken into custody at once. At the top of the list, Uncle Jerry, E.J. Glom, Dwight Baker. As for the winners, they weren't immediately arrested. Instead, agents showed up at their homes, knocked on their doors, sat them down, and made one thing very clear. If you refuse to cooperate, you can be arrested right now. The surprise? Not a single one refused. Every one of them talked. Every one of them cooperated. And then, the story exploded in the media. Huge headlines, mugshots everywhere, and one name dominating the coverage: Uncle Jerry. The man who had stayed in the shadows for years was suddenly at the center of one of the largest fraud scandals in American history. Uncle Jerry hired a powerful attorney, someone experienced, someone who understood high-stakes federal cases. Meanwhile, McDonald's released an official statement, a public apology to customers. They promised accountability. They promised to fix the system. Their first decisive move? Immediate termination of their contract with Simon Marketing. And it didn't stop there. After the scandal broke, other companies that worked with Simon cut ties immediately. The result? Total collapse. Simon's stock price crashed from $100 a share to just 50 cents in a single day. One of the most dramatic stock collapses at the time. As for the Dittler Brothers Printing Company, the FBI raided it, seized documents, took anything that could serve as evidence. Not long after, the printing company shut down too. Uncle Jerry, one man, had triggered the downfall of entire businesses. Hundreds of jobs gone. Now came the final phase. Uncle Jerry's lawyer sat him down and told him plainly, "If you don't confess, this case could put you away for 20 years. Easy." Negotiations with prosecutors began. The deal was straightforward. Full confession, full cooperation, reveal every detail, every name. In exchange, the prosecution would recommend a reduced sentence. Uncle Jerry was left with only one choice: stay silent. and fall alone, or talk and bring everything into the light. But the biggest question still lingered. How did he actually steal the game pieces? And was there anyone else in the network who hadn't been exposed yet? Because sometimes, the final secret is the one that changes the entire story. In the end, Uncle Jerry decided to talk. He chose to confess, to reveal everything, and most importantly, to explain exactly how he had been stealing the game pieces, despite all those layers of security. Remember how we talked earlier about how the high-value pieces were transported? The important pieces were placed inside a special briefcase. That briefcase was literally handcuffed to Uncle Jerry's wrist, and it couldn't be opened without a two-part security code. Half the code was with Uncle Jerry. The other half was with an independent accountant who traveled with him every single time. That accountant was later interrogated, and investigators confirmed she had absolutely nothing to do with the fraud. But Uncle Jerry, he was smarter than anyone realized. During flights, he and the accountant were always together. Always. Except for one moment. When one of them went to the restroom. Somehow, during those moments, Uncle Jerry managed to learn the second half of the code. Maybe he watched her enter it. Maybe he memorized it from the corner of his eye. Either way, he eventually had the full combination. But opening the briefcase wasn't the hardest part. Inside the briefcase was a sealed envelope. That envelope was secured with a tamper-evident security sticker. If the sticker was peeled or broken, it would be obvious. That's where Uncle Jerry's real genius showed up. Inside the airplane bathroom, he would unlock the briefcase, take out a small blade, carefully slice open the security seal, remove the high-value pieces, the $1 million piece, the $100,000 pieces, the car prizes, all the big ones, and then he would replace them with ordinary game pieces, free food, small prizes, low-value items. He always knew the exact number of pieces inside because the quantity was written right there on the envelope. Now here's the question that shocked everyone. What about the security sticker? How did he reseal it? The answer is almost unbelievable. Uncle Jerry had the exact same original security stickers. He would place a new sticker right over the old one, with extreme precision, and no one noticed a thing. So where did he get those stickers? According to his confession, he claimed Simon Marketing accidentally mailed him a package containing extra security seals, a mistake shipment. Many people doubted that story, but no one could prove he was lying. Most likely, he got them from someone inside the company, and the accidental shipment story was created to protect that person. But that part was never fully proven. After swapping the pieces, he would close the briefcase, sit back down next to the accountant, and continue the trip as if nothing had happened. They'd arrive at the packaging facilities. The briefcase would be opened in front of supervisors. Everyone believed those were the real winning pieces. And just like that, the deception continued for 12 years, without anyone noticing. After Uncle Jerry's confession, the entire picture came into focus. 53 people were charged, 53 winners over the years. All of them admitted they had purchased the pieces, except 7. 7 people claimed they had no idea the pieces were stolen. One of them was George Chandler, the man who got the $1 million piece through his adoptive father, Dwight Baker, the same father who told him the divorce story. At first, George was convicted, but he kept appealing, again and again. The case dragged through the courts until 2004, And finally, he was acquitted. Not guilty, but by then, the damage was done. His reputation suffered. His businesses suffered. His life was turned upside down. All because of one man, Dwight Baker. George was furious. They cut ties, stopped speaking, but years later, they reconciled. As for Uncle Jerry, he had brought the curtain down on one of the biggest fraud schemes in American history, a story that started as a simple promotional game and ended as a scandal that shook the entire country. And that's the thing about greed. It never starts big, it starts small. One decision, one shortcut, one no one will ever know, until suddenly, everyone knows. Most of the remaining winners, they didn't go to prison. But the court placed them under house arrest for 1 or 2 years. And on top of that, they were forced to repay every dollar they had received. If someone couldn't pay the full amount, they had to make monthly payments. Even the middlemen themselves didn't end up behind bars. They were placed under house arrest too and ordered to repay huge sums in installments. Why? Because there was no proof that they knew where Uncle Jerry was getting the pieces from. Nobody asked, and he never told. Legally, they couldn't be treated as direct co-conspirators, even if, in reality, they were dangerously close. The only person who actually went to prison was Uncle Jerry. But because he fully cooperated with prosecutors, he received just 3 years. 3 years, plus a $12 million fine. Sounds massive, right? Here's the twist. He was allowed to pay that fine in monthly installments of around $370, which means, realistically, he'll probably die without even paying back $100,000 of it. Many people believe Uncle Jerry hid millions in cash, buried, stored somewhere, untouched. Why? Because to this day, he lives in a nice home, drives good cars, and lives comfortably. And not only that, he's currently living with his 7th wife. Yes, 7th. So a lot of people feel he never truly paid the price, especially considering how many lives were damaged. Employees at Simon Marketing, workers at Dittler Brothers Printing, innocent winners who ended up drowning in tax debt. Take Gloria Brown, for example. She couldn't repay the loan she took out, and on top of that, she was ordered to make additional monthly payments to reimburse the prize money she had received. This crime was not victimless. To protect its reputation, McDonald's announced after the scandal that it would give away $25 million, roughly the value of the stolen prizes, to random customers. And with that, legally, the case was closed. But one question remained, one that bothered everyone. Who was the informant? Who made the call to the FBI that started all of this? Many people assumed it was the flight attendant, Jerry Colombo's mistress. After all, she had received a $100,000 prize. Jerry took the money and left her stuck with a massive tax bill. After Jerry died, she panicked. She went to the IRS and told them what she knew to protect herself. After that, no one chased her for taxes. No one contacted her, so she believed she was the whistleblower. But the truth? No. The IRS is a massive federal agency. They have investigators. They have resources. They wouldn't hand off a case this big to the FBI without being central to it. And more importantly, the real informant called the FBI directly. The flight attendant didn't even know Uncle Jerry personally. The FBI never officially revealed the informant's identity. But years later, someone in the family exposed the secret. The real informant was Ma Colombo, Jerry Colombo's own mother. Surprising, right? So why would a mother do that? Remember, Jerry and his wife, Robin, had a son. The grandmother wanted custody. But custody initially went to Robin. After Jerry's death, the house was robbed. Robin tried to maintain the same luxurious lifestyle. She got involved in check fraud, drug charges, and eventually she went to prison. At that point, custody went to the grandmother. But years later, Robin was close to being released, and the grandmother risked losing custody again. So she made a move. She contacted the FBI and told them everything she knew. During the investigation, it came out that Robin had actively participated in the scheme, helping her husband choose winners. Because of that, her prison sentence increased. So in the end, Uncle Jerry wasn't the only one who went to prison. Robin served more time, and the grandmother got what she wanted: custody of her grandson. And strangely, today, after everything, the grandmother, Robin, and the son live in peace, as if nothing ever happened. It seems that as the son grew up, he played a major role in bringing them back together. Time has a way of softening anger, especially when family is involved. And here, we've reached the end of the story. A story inside a story. Layered, complicated, but completely true from beginning to end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There are many more stories here worth your time. And right now, you've got more incredible stories waiting for you. I'll see you in the next one.